In 1492, a strange thing happened. An Italian explorer named Christopher Columbus sailed across the Atlantic Ocean and landed in the Americas. An event that would change the course of history forever and that we usually commemorate with a song. Yes, I'm talking about the song 1492 by the Group One, a song which is considered a classic among many people, and one which I don't particularly like. But let's talk about why. Before we get into it, of course, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any future videos. And with that out of the way, let's begin. 1492 is famous for being the year that Christopher Columbus reached the Americas, an event that's often called the Discovery of the Americas. The word discovery in this context means the act of Columbus having found these lands previously unknown to Europeans. Although the title is somewhat controversial because it was not actually the first time that Europeans had reached the Americas. There is no doubt that this voyage was a historical turning point. The most common claim of Europeans reaching the Americas before Columbus is that of the Vikings, who established a settlement in Newfoundland, Canada, around 500 years before Columbus arrived. However, this event is not commonly associated with the discovery of the Americas, because the Norse presence in North America was short-lived, perhaps lasting no longer than 100 years, and because they never explored further south. This is why Columbus's voyage is still seen as the discovery of the Americas, despite the fact that the Vikings had reached there before him. In addition to the Vikings, there is also evidence that other European cultures, such as the Basques, and the Celtiberians had also fished along the coast of North America in the centuries before Columbus. But again, the impact of these events is dwarfed by the arrival of the Spanish and Portuguese in the following decades. To understand why this event is so important, you have to understand just how much of an impact it had on the world. To start off, it marked the beginning of a new age of exploration. Previously, travel between Europe, Asia, and Africa was done through a series of land routes, some of which were quite treacherous. With the discovery of the Americas, a new sea route to Asia was discovered, leading to increased trade between Europe and Asia. It also led to an increase in trade between Europe and Africa. In addition, the riches gained from the Americas transformed European economies, giving them more money to pursue overseas expansion. All of this wealth also fueled the Renaissance and the Reformation. So, in a way, the discovery of the Americas helped end the Middle Ages in Europe. Of course, none of this would have been possible if it weren't for the development of new technologies like the compass, the astrolabe, and the caravel, but that's a topic for another video. Aside from influencing Europe, this event had an even greater influence on the indigenous peoples of the Americas. The impact of the Spanish conquest of the Americas is something that has been well documented. They brought diseases that devastated native populations. They conquered or subjugated many of the local chiefdoms and kingdoms, and they caused massive societal upheaval. Of course, the effects of this event can still be felt today, which is why it's still a heavily debated topic. This is why the song 1492 by 1 is so controversial. To those who support the song, the lyrics accurately represent what this event meant to Europeans, and they a good representation of what the song is trying to accomplish, which is to teach people about this event. On the other hand, the song has been criticized for ignoring the negative impacts that this event had on the indigenous peoples of the Americas, and there is truth to both sides. Let me explain my opinion on the matter. I can understand why people would want to teach others about this event and the importance of this event. A lot of people don't learn much about this period of time in school, and when they do, they usually don't learn about the wider impact that this event had, and so songs like 1492 help fill that gap in knowledge. On top of this, I think that Columbus was indeed a brave man. His voyage was dangerous, and he might have ended up dying if he hadn't reached land. He also didn't know where exactly he was landing. He thought that he had reached India, but of course he had actually reached the Bahamas. Despite this, he still went on to explore many of the Caribbean islands: Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, Puerto Rico, the Lesser Antilles, and the Central American mainland. He also explored parts of South America. And it was during his fourth voyage that he reached what is today known as Panama. So yes, I can understand why people would write a song about his voyages. However, I don't think that the song does enough to address the darker side of colonization. When I listen to the song, all I hear is how great this event was for Europeans and how Columbus was a brave explorer. I don't hear anything about the negative effects that this event had on the indigenous peoples of the Americas, and this is what bothers me about the song. Colonization isn't a proud moment in human history. It was a violent process that involved the oppression of non-white people, and the only reason that it is viewed positively by some is because of the positive effects it had on colonizers. This perspective ignores the agency of the colonized. And this isn't the only example of this kind of behavior either. Many statues of Christopher Columbus have been removed from public spaces because of this, and there are even entire countries who celebrate the opposite of this day. For example, in 2015, the United States and many other countries celebrated the 500th anniversary of the voyage of 1492, while Bolivia, Ecuador, and Guatemala observed the 500th anniversary of the indigenous resistance to the conquest. It's also important to remember that Christopher Columbus wasn't the first European to reach the Americas. As I mentioned earlier, the Vikings had established a settlement in Newfoundland, Canada, around 500 years before Columbus arrived. And yet, in the song, Columbus is given all the credit. It doesn't even mention that other Europeans had reached here before him. It also fails to mention that he wasn't even the first Spaniard to reach the Americas. The Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon had landed in Florida 39 years before Columbus reached the Bahamas. Columbus himself actually claimed to have landed in India, not the Americas. He only realized the following day that he had actually reached an island in the Caribbean, an island which he named San Salvador. But then, after reaching Cuba, he knew that he had discovered a new landmass. So, to conclude, is Columbus really the hero that he's made out to be? Well, as I said earlier, I can understand why people would want to write a song about his voyages, because they were truly impressive feats of exploration. And perhaps that's what the song is trying to do: celebrate the spirit of adventure and exploration. However, in doing so, I feel like it ignores the darker side of colonization. The song is essentially a celebration of the oppression of non-white people, and that is something that I do think is okay. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Why don't you guys let me know what you think in the comments? Do you think it's okay to celebrate colonization? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any future videos. And with that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.